Hello, and today we're looking at release programs. So you've got a zoo, and in your zoo you've successfully reared a species of animal, and you've now got so many that you're looking to start a viable population out in the wild, so to reintroduce them. Now, this needs careful consideration to result in a viable population. So, a population that will be self maintaining, has enough individuals to have genetic diversity and successful breeding, and it has all of the different things that it needs. So, we find a place that looks appropriate, so some sort of woodland or something like that, and we release our animals. But wait, it's not big enough. So the first thing we need to make sure is our habitat area is big enough for our organisms. Animals that live in deserts, for example, need a huge area. So we need to make sure that it is big enough, so large enough, suitable habitat. The next thing we need to do is make sure that there is enough food for our organisms to eat. So this might need a little bit of tweaking so we can increase the carrying capacity of our habitat. So we might plant food tree species or make sure that we've culled competitors in some way so that there's enough prey, controlled invasive species, things like that. So we've got reliable food supplies. The next thing we need to do is make sure that there aren't any nasty creatures out there that's going to eat our precious animals. So this might mean that we need to control predators, or like introduce species. They could be quite a significant predator risk. Think cane toads or cats or rats or something like that. So again, we might have to do some artificial population control for that. We need to make sure that there's suitable breeding sites. So this might mean putting up nest boxes for an organism that nests in tree holes that otherwise it wouldn't be able to breed very well, or controlling some other biotic or abiotic factor to help with that. We need to make sure that we have water available. Obviously, this is really important for aquatic or amphibious species, but all animals need water. So desert animals might need access to water holes. This might bring them into conflict with the locals who also need that water for cattle or something like that. So a new arrangement needs to be made. Talking of local people, we need the support of local people. They need to be either dissuaded or encouraged to protect them, or dissuaded from harming them through poaching or hunting or something like that. Perhaps because they can get some economic value from it, with either being employed as rangers or through tourism. And finally, what we need is official protection or support. So this might mean things like laws prohibiting hunting, or legal protection for the habitat. Once we've released our organism into its habitat, there are a number of things that we need to do. So we have post-release support and monitoring. Now these are important. So there are two different types of support that we can use. We've got hard release. And this isn't where we shove them out the back of a truck or something like this. This means there is no support provided. We don't provide any post-release support, and typically this will only be successful if it's a species where behavior is from instinct. So they're born with behaviors built in as instincts, and they do not need to learn survival skills. So the examples for this are things like fish, amphibians, and reptiles, and insects. Now, the other alternative to this is a soft release. This only works where, this is required when the species behavior is learnt. So it needs to learn how to do things like hunt or find food. And to help them with this, we have a gradual decrease in the level of support. So this could be typically for birds or mammals because they have learnt responses. And it could be that we release our organisms into a relatively small caged area where we provide them with food and water. And then as they become more independent and learn more about their environment, we introduce them to a larger enclosure, typically still providing with food and water, obviously, because they're in an enclosed space and there'll be a limit to the carrying capacity of an enclosure. And then eventually we would perhaps just make sure they've got access to food and water, but not have any enclosure at all in a habitat. And then eventually they will not have any support whatsoever. And this can help overcome things like predators. They are going to struggle to hunt because they won't have learnt any hunting skills. And their parents wouldn't have been able to show them because they might have been born in captivity. They might not have been able to find or recognize food, find or recognize poisonous food. So to avoid them, they might struggle to avoid predators. Or they might come into conflict with social groups of wild populations. So they might struggle to be accepted by wild social groups. Once they've been released, it is really important that we monitor their movements so we can identify where they are going and where they are, what resources they're using, and also their survival. How long do they last? Are they able to reproduce? Is there any sort of particular hotspots where we have fatalities, and then we can investigate them in more detail. So some examples of species that have been successfully released are things like red kites, which look a bit like a buzzard, and we've used radio tags to monitor them once they've been released to find out where they've gone and if they come into conflict with anyone. White-tailed eagles. And the scimitar horns Oryx.